it'd be really hard to screw up if I had 10 property. Like I'm about to turn 30. If I had 10 properties by the time I'm 40, there's no way I can screw up.
If we didn't even buy a deal and those get paid off in 15 to 20 years, we're really going to be doing amazing. Because
if I had had a picture of like, hey, I want to buy a property, probably could have got to it a lot quicker, but it took me like 4 or 5 years before I bought my first property.
Just DM people and always try to have like something to talk about. Like say, hey, I'm looking at this deal. If purchase price is $500,000, I think it needs 20,000 in CapEx.
Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a exciting episode for you today. We got Tristen Polori on. I met Tristen on X. I saw him posting all the time about commercial real estate, and I was trying to connect with a bunch of people on X so that I could learn more about other people or what people are doing in other markets, see how I can add value, to other people. And Tristen was a great guy. We hopped on a phone call. We just started talking about what each other's doing. We reviewed a couple deals together and really built a great relationship on X. So Tristen, thank you for popping on today this morning. We kind of did it super short notice. Just a little background. He texted me this morning and was like, dude, when can I come on the pod? And we were talking about times and stuff, and our 9 a.m. actually had to reschedule, unfortunately. But I texted Tristen, he was available. So Tristen, appreciate you popping on, man, and looking forward to this.
Yeah, man. I was actually listening to your podcast the way to the office this morning, and I texted you. I'm like, dude, get me on the podcast. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, hey, our guest just canceled. You want to get on now? So I was like, oh, okay. I was gonna like prepare notes and be like professional about it, but now I guess I'll just throw this one together. So thanks for having me on. It's good to meet you, Graham. Good to see you again, Jesse. I'm excited for this one, guys.
Yeah, for sure. We appreciate the short notice, and I don't want to speak for our audience, but we try to be not super formal and more conversational and more just like authentic, like just having real conversations about what's going on in brokerage and commercial real estate investing, instead of like, listen to some of these podcasts and it's just like robots, and no harm in that. Some people just want the same questions asked and everything. But yeah, I don't think the preparing's good, but we like the free flow conversation.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm curious, what episode were you listening to?
I think I was just listening to the one y'all just dropped where you're doing like the end of year reflections and things like that. Just talking about what you accomplished in 2025, what you're looking to do in 2026. I think I only got through like 10 minutes of it, to be honest. So I didn't get through all of it, but yeah, I was trying to tune in. It's good stuff you guys are doing.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So yeah, give us for people who don't know you, give us a little bit of background of how you got started in commercial real estate, and then eventually how you got started in brokerage to investing.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. In college, graduated 2018, and started my career as a commercial real estate broker in 2019. I thought I wanted to do real estate development, realized that's really, really difficult, takes a lot of cash. I was like, let me just start off in brokerage, kind of learn the business a bit. Started off doing retail, mostly medical tenant rep, actually. So did that in 2019 up until 2022, which is when I bought my first property, which was a self-storage facility. And this is before self-storage got crazy popular. So I think I caught it just at the right time. It was on market, LoopNet deal, listed for like $440K at the time. And then I knew a banker. I said, hey, I'm looking at this deal. I don't know, like, if you can help me finance this. He's like, dude, I don't do self-storage, but I know a couple guys that do. So just like that, I was like, all right, let's figure this out. Because for me, I always knew I wanted to do real estate. I wanted to own properties. You play games as a kid where it's like you can spend your money on, whatever now, or you can invest it to something that's going to keep producing resources. And I was like, let me do that in real life. So I was like, I need to start buying properties by any means necessary. So I'd love to, I guess tell you, would you like to start with the first deal, or and walk through it and how I got started, or what would be easiest?
Yeah, we can definitely dig into that. I think something you said that just hit me while I was listening is like impressive, honestly. It sounds like we started similar time. So you said you were 29, about to turn 30 in 2 weeks. I turned 30. Well, I'm 30, about to turn 31 in what's today? The 4th?
Thursday.
3 days. So very close in age. I started in 2018, I think, my brokerage career. But it's impressive that you knew out the gate that you wanted to own properties and stuff. Man, I was graduating college, like I want to do real estate, I think, but I thought I was going to do residential. Other than that, I was snowboarding and hanging out with my fiance, and I didn't have that clear picture. But it's cool that you had a clear clear picture of what you wanted to do when you graduated and then, through now, and you were able to get something so quickly. Because if I had had a picture of like, hey, I want to buy a property, I probably could have got to it a lot quicker, but it took me like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years before I bought my first property. So I think that's really cool. I think Jesse did a good job of that too. He always knew like kind of where he wanted to go and had a plan for it. I was always kind of just floating, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know, guys. I mean, and it's hard. Like owning property is hard. My parents. I mean, they both owned their house before, but besides that, never owned any kind of investment, anything like that. So, for me, I was like, let me just figure this out. It'll be the first, my family to own something that's not a house, and actually makes money. And I just like, let me just try to build something here and just try something out. So it's been great. I never really had, to be honest, like a mentor, but I did have, the internet, which is really all you need today to get started. Some people think like, oh, you need a mentor first. You need someone you can just be right underneath. I'm like, that's nice to have, but like, to be honest, like I'm on X a lot. That's how me and Jesse met. There's a bunch of really smart guys out there, and you can DM them if you have questions, and 90% of them will answer. Like when I was first buying properties, there's a guy, he's on X. His name's AJ Osborne. Really big self-storage guy now. Back then, I don't know if he was quite as big, but I was able to DM him and be like, hey, I'm looking at this property, just give me some ideas, and got quick instant feedback. And if I wasn't asking him, I was looking at YouTube videos or reading posts or whatever it is. So there's a plethora of information out there if you're willing to just go look for it and study it. I would say so.
100%, 100%, and that's so relevant to new people, and I feel like they need to hear that because, like, I wish so badly there was. Oh, well, now there's so much content out there. Like, I don't know how many commercial real estate podcasts there are. There's probably a ton, and one of the reasons I wanted to start this is like I want to be talking to myself like 5 years ago, and hopefully we do an okay job of that. But I think the lesson in that is like, don't think that people won't reply to you. Like that's such a good point. Like you have no idea how many people will reply. I've DM'd very famous people like in the real estate world or whatever it may be, business, asking them something, or even like people on the podcast, and they've said, sure, we'll come on. And it's like, wow, that's crazy. Or, hey, I'm looking at this, what do you think? Just like you did. And people a lot of times will respond. I mean, not every single time, but a lot of times they will. And I feel like a lot of people just think, no way they're going to respond. So they don't even try. But that's such a good point that, you can reach out to anybody and you never know. And also people who are good people, which is most people, like, who actually start doing well in real estate and investing and brokerage, they love to help people coming up. So like they want to answer. Like a guy messaged me from the podcast, shout out to Jason, and he was like, hey man, I'd love to ask you about this and that and the other thing. And I was like, sure, man. He's like, oh wow, I didn't think you'd reply. And I'm like, of course I'll reply. Like I want to help people. That's the whole point of the podcast. It's not it's not just fluff. Like we want to help people come up with us as we're going. So yeah, I think that's important for people to know. Just reach out to people.
Yeah,
absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And that's the best way to find a mentor. We talk a lot about mentorship and stuff on this podcast, and it can be just something as simple as DMing somebody. I DM'd Chris Kirkman, and he took 15-20 minutes time out of his day to hop on a call, and we literally walked through the whole deal. And I did not expect that, especially for him to carve out time to meet with me and talk with them. But you got to ask the mentors a specific question so that they have something to actually help you with specifically. That's what's going to get you a response. It's not just, hey, let's grab lunch or coffee. It's having that direct question and conversation.
100%.
For sure. And I think the biggest thing, so for me, I would say I'm not at the very beginning of my career. I'm like, probably a few years in. So if you're someone brand new and you're looking to get into like real estate investing, what I would say is don't just DM people and be like, hey, can I pick your brain? Or, hey, can I have 20 minutes on the phone with you? I'd say always try to have like something to talk about, like say, hey, I'm looking at this deal. Purchase price is $500,000. I think it needs 20,000 in capex. I think it'll cash flow this much. Could you like give me your thoughts on it? Like, boom, now they have something to look at. Now they have something where they can immediately come in and add value instead of just this. Some people like DM people and they're like, hey, just tell me about like real estate investing. It's like, help them out a little bit. Like if you want someone to help you, like help them help you by bringing them something to talk about that you're working on. Rather than just be like, hey, give me some free information. I don't know about what, just give it to me. Like people DM me on X and they're like, hey, can you like, tell me about investing? I'm like, dude, like it's not just, you don't just jump into it. You need to do some of the work first before you bring that question to someone and DM them about it. So just keep that in mind.
100%. Tell us about that deal you were talking about. Your first deal you bought, the self-storage facility.
Yeah, so I was like, look, I want to own real estate. I don't care what I have to do. And I was kind of in this position, to be honest, I wasn't making that much money in brokerage. 2020 had just happened, which was horrible for me because it was my second year in brokerage, which, your first year always sucks. Second year is when you're starting to get going. But 2020, and I was working with a lot of medical deals. So every medical user was like, I'm going to hold off on everything for the next 2 years, basically. So that sucked. 2021, it was starting to come back. I think I misspoke. I think I said I bought it in 2022. I think it was 21. And the reason I remember that is because I had gotten a COVID stimulus check, which wasn't a lot of money, but I'd added that to my bank account. And then, I basically was riding on, I think I had 15K in my bank account, or 15K that wasn't my emergency fund, right? Yeah. And I was like, this isn't a lot of money. Maybe I can figure out a way to do a deal. So I found something. It was, I want to say 400 something thousand is what it was listed for. And then I called them, and the broker listing it was actually the owner. So he sold ranches and farms and stuff out in the country. This was in Texas, nice little tertiary, small town Texas. And his family had owned this self-storage facility for 40 years, something like that. And they were ready to just sell it and move on. So I'd called, and he said, yeah, we're, trying to sell it. And I said, well, let me meet you out there, because I knew meeting face to face would be the best way to go about it. So I met him out there. I made sure I had my cowboy boots on and jeans just in case. And I got there. He had his cowboy boots and jeans on. And I was like, all right, this is going to go well. And then we walked the property, and then, we started negotiating. So just to walk through really the numbers, we ended up negotiating a purchase price of $410,000. So not very expensive, right? I mean, you could buy a house for $400,000 easily these days.
For sure.
And then I got a loan from a bank, conventional. It was a 85 LTV, so only 15% down. So if you do the math there, I think you're talking about $60,000, something like that. Probably doing that math terribly. But I remember we needed about $80,000 total, because you got to have the down payment plus closing costs plus some reserves, right? And then the bank also was able to give us a construction loan on top of it of I want to say $70,000, because the plan was to add another row of units after we bought it, because there's 4 rows of units. There's room to add a 5th one at one point. So how did I get the money, right? Because $15,000 obviously is a lot less than $80,000. Now this is where I was actually able to lean on a few people. I leaned on my mom for one. She gave me about 30 of it, and then I knew remember that banker I mentioned originally? He actually, I told him about the deal. He's like, I can't finance that for you, but I'd be interested in investing. He put in 10, and then actually took out a personal loan for another 20. So I think that all wraps out to about what I needed. And guys, look, I don't know if I recommend taking out this much leverage on your first deal, especially when you only have 15K in your pocket. But my position was, hey, I'm either going to go out swinging or I'm just going to go out, So I had nothing to lose at that point. I was like, whatever. If I lose 15K, I just start over, and it's not a big deal. But yeah, bought the deal, was able to raise the rents. It was 100% filled facility, so under market rents, raised rents. Eventually got the next row of units built, kept it fully occupied, and then a couple years later was able to sell it for about twice what we paid for it.
Wow. That's awesome. That's sick. I love that, because you spoke on one of the key elements that most people don't have, which is just the willingness to take risk. If anybody looked at that scenario on paper and said, I got 15K in my bank account, I'm borrowing money from this person, that person, and this person, and the bank, 99% of people are gonna say, oh no way. But I think Jesse would agree. People like us three would be like, let's go, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
And that's kind of exactly how we started too. Is definitely balls to the wall mentality, because you have to just jump in and do it at some point. Yeah, we went to industrial boot camp with Saul and Saul, I'm not sure how you pronounce the last name, but Saul Z and then Alan Shuren. They were talking, and they were like, these are really successful guys. They've bought and sold a ton of real estate, have huge portfolios, and they were talking about we do this and we do that, and at the end of the day we do like this, and they cross their fingers, and we're like, okay, so it's not just us. We're like, okay. But yeah, I think that's a mindset that a lot of people have, especially when they start in the beginning. So I think that's cool. So you said you bought it for 410, put in about 70. So you're all in for, let's just, round up, call it 500 grand. And then you're able to flip it for somewhere close to $1 million is what you're saying?
No, we flipped it for, I said twice what we paid for it, which we paid 410, but then you have to factor in, we paid another 70 to add another other row of buildings, sold it for like 835. So if you want to do the numbers, I want to say it's like a 300 and some change capital gain there, something like that.
It's amazing. And then how did you said you didn't mind sharing this stuff. How did you split that among the LPGP?
Yeah, so the way it worked is, remember, there was basically three investors, right? Myself, my mother, and that banker I told you about. The banker refused to let me pay him more than he gave me. Like he wrote me the check for 10K, and then when it was time to pay him back, he said just the 10K, like that's it. I don't want a penny more. I just want to help you out. I was like, wow. That's crazy.
That's amazing.
Okay.
What can you send me his contact information?
Yeah, I'll send it over to you right away. And then my mom, I just did 50-50, which was a great deal for my mom because she didn't do anything, right? She just gave me the money and then didn't touch a thing for those 2 years where I was like, playing, property manager and construction manager and trying to figure all the marketing out and, all that stuff. But my mom, she just got to, collect those proceeds at the end of it. And I honestly, I didn't even want to sell the building, but it was one of those things where it's like, okay, do you take something that's cash flowing, I don't know, 30,000 a year, or do you sell it, and take 300K or whatever it is, and then go do more properties? I felt like for me, at that point in my career, I was like, I should sell this and then roll this into a bigger deal, which is what I did in 2024. So yeah.
That's two things in the group we're in, Commercial Academy. Have you told him about Commercial Academy, Jesse? I'm sure you have.
I feel like we've talked about it for sure.
It's a really good mastermind that we're in. This podcast is also sponsored by them, but we were talking about it long before we were sponsored. Just a really good group of guys and girls who are just crushing it. And they have a general rule of thumb. Obviously, every scenario is different, but a general rule of thumb of, if you can get 10 years cash flow selling it day one, then you should do it. And that scenario you just said was basically exactly that. 30K times 10, 300K. You're able to sell and get 300K. Then that group would say, sell it for sure. And then we had Jared Elmar. He's a very successful investor in South Florida. He was telling us on the podcast, like in the beginning when you're young, you have to sell. You have to sell these things, build your track record, build up your capital. So then you can go to other people and say, look, I did this deal. I bought it for 410. I put in 70K, turn around and sold it for 800 and something in 2 years. Because if you go to an investor and say, this is what I just did, versus the other side of it, oh yeah, I bought this building for 410, put 70 into it, and now it's cash flowing 30K a year, they're going to be a lot more impressed with the sale, and they're going to have a clear picture and track record, and it's going to build a lot of trust. So me and Jesse don't like to sell, but we're going to sell one of the buildings we bought, and that was the reasoning. It's like, it's a track record, get some capital back, and just keep going. So I think that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that made sense for me. I didn't know I was going to use it necessarily for my track record, but looking back, it absolutely helps out. Especially going to my second deal, they say, well, what's your experience? Well, I'm like, well, my first deal, I did this, did I get lucky? I don't know, probably. But that's what I did. And it helped a lot. But yeah, I mean, to your point, don't get me wrong. I love cash flow. I love long-term wealth. But if I can turn 1 into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, and then hold those 8, for 20 years, I think that's better than trying to slowly
100K or whatever it may be instead of 30.
Yeah,
because you built it up so much.
Yeah. Now I have a personal goal of buying one property every year for the next 10 years. Because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it'd be really hard to screw up if I had 10 property. Like I'm about to turn 30. If I had 10 properties by the time I'm 40, and they're all like, stabilized, doing well, things like that. Like there's no way I can screw up. Like I should be okay, from a retirement, cash flow, like worst case scenario perspective. So if I can just stick to that plan, get that one property a year, I'll be in great shape.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. And sometimes we have to step back and think about, okay, we've been able to buy 3 deals ourselves and 4 with our firm. And if we didn't do anything, if we didn't even buy a deal and those get paid off in 15 to 20 years, we're really going to be doing amazing because we didn't put any money to most of these deals. Actually, we didn't put any money to any of them. And
a little tiny bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, not a ton. Well, Graham sold as one of his houses and put it in there. So no money out of pocket, but still equity that he's been working on for years. But we'll be killing it just from our tenants paying off our debt alone.
Yeah, if you just let real estate do its thing, for sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I
Yeah,
was
what do
gonna,
they say? Wait, don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait.
yeah,
That's one of
that's a
my
good saying.
favorite, probably one
100%.
of my favorite sayings right there. Just get
Yeah.
in the game. If you just get in the game, you can't lose.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, me and Tristan just met here on the podcast, but I can tell you're going to do really great things and I like you a lot. So I'm going to do what I know someone would do to me. I'm going to challenge you and say, why one, dude? You
Yeah.
could buy 3 or 4 in a
I thought you
year.
were gonna
Like,
challenge me to a rap battle for a second. I
no,
was
no,
like,
no.
oh.
Like, because I remember thinking, like, I came to City Plat, the firm we're at, who has a really big portfolio, and they're very successful. And I interviewed. This is just so funny looking back now that I know Nikita so well. I interviewed with them, and I was sitting in the interview, and I was like, "Yeah, I have a plan. I want to buy, I think I said one house every year for the next 5 years, and I'm gonna Airbnb it." And Nikita literally looked at me and was like, "We're trying to buy 5 houses this week," and I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, so, anyways, that was just the mindset we walked into like immediately, and I was like, "I freaking love it." But I mean, it just challenged me. It's like, you did that storage
One a
deal. You
quarter.
could buy one, more than one for sure. Two, I think ours is like 3, maybe 2 or 3,
Yeah.
like really solid deal.
Yeah.
But even that, I mean, I think we could do more than that. There's obviously a balance of like being aggressive, but also buying really good deals. And sometimes you just don't find that kind of deal in the course of a year. But I think you could definitely do more than one a year.
Yeah, I could, and especially the more I do it, the better I get, the more efficient I am, right? So, I could. I guess my base at least is one a year. If I do 2, 3 a year, I mean, shoot, awesome. But I know, like, I'm like, all right, if I have at least one property added on every year for the next 10 years, I know I'll be solid. If it ends up being 30 properties or 50 or whatever, I mean, great, but that's a good point. Why stop there?
For sure, man. For sure.
Five properties in a week is insane. He's like, he just trips over a property and buys it.
That's kind of how they are. They're wild, especially Nikita. He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's an animal in buying stuff. But yeah, so walk us through. You sold that property, and did you 1031 or did you take the proceeds? And then pay the taxes, and then go buy something later. Or what'd you do?
Nope, I quit my job and I went to Europe for 6.5 weeks.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, I was 4 years into my brokerage career at that point. I was not having a good time in my brokerage. They were not promoting growth for me, and I was like, I need to make a change. And they had a really hard non-compete to where if I did change, I would have to, start over basically. So I was like, well, screw it. If I'm going to leave, and I have to start over anyway, I'm going to take a vacation first. So went backpacking in Europe for 6.5 weeks with no properties, just a little bit of extra cash from the first one, came back, and then started working again. And then it wasn't until 2024, so just the end of last year, I found a property, another self-storage property. This one was a bit bigger. It was listed for like 1.4 million, something like that. And I really liked it. It was only about an hour and a half from where I lived here in Austin. And I was like, let me go try to take this one down. And I had underwritten, about 30, 40 other properties at this point. This is the first one that kind of really made sense to me. And same thing. One of those small Texas towns, show up, meet the owner in your cowboy boots, first 20 minutes, you don't even talk about the property, you're just kind of BSing, and then try to build a little bit of a rapport, and was able to get him to a 1.15 million purchase price.
And you said it's a 1.4.
Yeah, I was listed at 1.4, and it was overpriced, but I had actually, funny enough, the broker that sold my storage facility was representing the seller on this storage facility, and he called me and was like, dude, like, I know it's listed at 1.4, but I think he would take 1.15, and he's like, we've had this thing, in LOI, then out of LOI, and LOI, and out of LOI, and he was like, for whatever reason, like, it's a good deal, it just hasn't worked for all these people that have tried to buy it. I'd love for it to work with you. So I was like, all right, let me take a look at it, and ran the numbers, and kind of said, all right, let's try to take it down for 1.15. And from there, I got a what did I get? I got with a bank, got a conventional loan. Obviously the rate environment had changed a lot since when I bought the first property. The first property, I think I had a 4.35 rate. And I was getting quotes in like around 7 for this one. So I had to add that to my underwriting, and then it was going to be a 35% down payment. So I needed about $350K in equity, and then for the loan, the rest was going to be in the loan, and then I needed some money for closing costs, reserves, all that stuff. So I ended up saying, okay, I need $400,000, and I didn't have $400,000. I had about 100 that I wanted to contribute to it. I could have contributed more, but I was like, yeah, I got to tap out 100 for this. So what I do, I started just calling everyone that I knew, and calling everyone, telling them what I was doing, saying, I need cash for this. Are you interested in investing? I was able to not pivot, but lean on my first deal. And my first deal I worked on as kind of my track record, be like, hey, here's what I did in my first one. Here's what I'm trying to do with this one. And what's interesting is when you start reaching out to people, sometimes they don't have the money or want to invest with you, but they know someone who might.
Yeah.
So when I was reaching out to people, it was actually more likely that they would be like, my friend wants to invest, or my client wants to invest, or like someone they know. So when you're asking, 10 people, you're actually asking probably like 50 people because they all know 5 people that might be interested. So, don't be afraid to just, talk to everyone you know, even the most unlikely, because they might know someone. So anyway, I was able to raise the money, 3 different investors. One was my aunt, one was a former client of mine, and then the fourth one was someone my aunt knew, a friend of hers. So, I had 100 in, 3 other investors each put in 100. We put together a GPLP agreement, got the bank loan, and then closed on it in December of 2024.
That's awesome. All right, Scram here. Let's be real. How long have you been saying you're going to get into commercial real estate? Has it been a year? Has it been 2? It's intimidating. I get it. But Commercial Academy just launched Fast Track. And honestly, it removes every excuse that you've been making in your head. For one really low price, you can get an entire library of J. Scott Shields' education online, all recorded by Scott himself, that has decades of proven strategies that's created a ton of millionaires. And now it's at your fingertips whenever you want. Plus, you'll unlock their deal crushing software, their opportunity evaluator, and their quick check. This stuff makes analyzing properties easier than just checking your email. And here's what blew my mind. Every Fast Track member gets a free ticket to the next Commercial Academy live event. That's hundreds of hungry investors, coaches, and J. Scott Shield in the same room. If you're done making excuses and ready to start making moves, this is it. Remember, it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. So text Fast Track to 888-653-1199. Again, that's 888-653-1199. The next wave of commercial real estate millionaires is starting now, and Fast Track is where it begins.
How did you break up? Because this is the second time that you've done multiple LPs. How do you typically kind of structure that? How much is it based off of how much they're putting in, obviously, but how much are you giving up to the LP side?
So here's what I told the LPs. And this is a common model for those that aren't familiar with it. You do like a preferred return and then a promote once you break past your preferred return. So for simple math, basically you put in $100,000. I'm gonna say, hey, look, as the GP, I'm gonna get you your $100,000 back plus a 9% preferred return. That means after a year, I would owe you $100,000 plus $9,000, right? If it's 2 years later, that owe you the $100,000 plus the $18,000, right? So every year that 9% return is the minimum that they get before I take anything, right? So my goal is to get them their $100,000 plus the 9%. And then after that, we hit the promote, which is that one was a 75-25 split. So the GP, myself, would get 25%, the LPs get 75%. So run through like a quick scenario. Let's just be simple. Let's say I sold the facility and I sold it and I doubled everyone's money basically. So everyone put 400,000 in and I sell it and 800,000 comes out. So what would first happen is they'd get all their, initial equity back, the 100,000, then they get that 9,000 on top. And then everything after that, I would take 25% and then they would keep 75%. So it gives me a reward basically for doing really well. But if I don't do very well, they're protected because they always have that minimum 9% in there. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, we've seen that for sure, and we've structured it basically the exact same, except for ours a little lower. Normally it's like 8% pref and then a 50-50 promote. 75-25 is definitely generous on your side.
Yeah, it's very LP generous, and part of that was because this is the first time I've done a true GP LP deal. I mean, my first deal was with my mom, really, and then the very generous banker that just threw $10K at it just to help me out. These people, I mean, 2 of them were not my family, right? One was, but still, they were more sophisticated and, they want to protect their upside and also kind of see, what I'm made of. So this is kind of more of a prove it deal. For me, which is why it's very favored towards the LPs. And I was okay with that. I was like, hey, you're taking a shot at this with me. You're putting 100,000 with someone, one of them I had never even met in person before. Actually 2 of them at the time. So it was just like, they're taking a shot. So I'm going to give them good terms and then go prove it. And then the next deal, I can get a little bit more aggressive with my splits.
Yeah. And if I can imagine, sorry.
Go ahead.
And if I can imagine the next deal that you're going to do, you're going to call them and they're going to be more excited to give you more money and be okay with giving you more equity, especially if you're going to be putting skin in the game as well. I think that's key too.
Yep,
Yeah.
which is exactly what happened on my third deal.
That's sick. So before we get into the third deal, I want to just know for people listening who don't, they're hearing this and maybe it's new or maybe they're familiar with it somewhat, but how do you set that up to be successful? Is it just as simple as an operating agreement with those terms outlined, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so for those that don't know how it works, basically what you do is you create an operating agreement. That agreement just says the entire relationship, who I am as the GP, who they are as the LP, who's putting in what money, how the splits work, how the payouts work, who has control, who doesn't. Like in my agreements, I have full control. They have no control, which is good. They don't know anything about investing in real estate. I do, so they shouldn't be making decisions. But then we also put, just the legal stuff in there, like if someone wants to sell their equity or if like I die, right, what happens, like things like that are in there. So that way every situation's covered, right? And then we put this all together, everyone signs it, and then we open a bank account under the LLC name and we put all the funds in that bank account, and then the operating agreement basically is attached to that, and then we just run it from there.
Nice. And so
Is that how you guys do it?
Yeah, very similar. How do you, I think this is just a good time for people listening to just get through, kind of all this stuff. So like you said, you have one bank account with, I guess with self-storage, you're paying taxes, you're paying insurance, you're paying maintenance, the tenant's just paying you. And I imagine some kind of online thing, but how did you set that up? Literally just one business bank account for that LLC?
Yep. Just created the LLC, and then you go to the bank and be like, hey, here's my LLC paperwork, make me a bank account for it. They do that. And then, all the investors wire their funds to that bank account. And then you wire the funds out of that bank account to the title company when you're buying the property, obviously. And then, all of your income, expenses, softwares, everything's connected to that bank account. So it's nice and clean, nothing, no personal accounts mixing in there.
For sure. And what do you use for like investor reporting to keep them updated on everything and giving them, the financials?
Yeah, I'm not too fancy, to be honest with you. I still do a lot of stuff in Excel just because I'm really good at Excel. And it's very customizable, and every property is just so different and unique that I enjoy that flexibility. And what I like to do is send my investors videos. I say, hey guys, here's what's going on with the property. I'll show them, if I'm doing work, I'll show them videos of the work being done. I'll go through the Excel pro formas, how we're performing, just talk through it, 20-minute Loom video once a quarter, just saying where we're at. And, that's it. And the investors are chill. They don't really check in too much. They just look forward to those reports. And I just try to give them as much information as possible and be as transparent as possible. And I always say, like, hey, if you want to look at the bank account, you want to look at the statements, anything you want, just tell me and I'll show it to you, So, and because I say that, they just trust me to, go and make sure I'm doing the right things, which I do. So
that's awesome. And then, we've heard several other very successful guys with big portfolios say that's all they do as well. Just to kind of try to keep it simple. We like keeping it simple too. Curious, do you do quarterly distributions or do you do monthly, or do you say, you give them a 3 or 5 year plan where you're going to sell it and they're going to get it all then?
So what I do is I say, if there's a distribution, it's quarterly, right? And the reason I say if is because, like the properties I buy are typically value add. So sometimes I'm reinvesting that cash flow right back into the property, or maybe, I'm still just kind of holding on to a larger reserves. So that way, if there's a rainy day, something happens, we have that to fall back on. Like the self-storage deal, we've only done one distribution. I've owned it for a year. And the investors are okay with that. The equity's already increased, almost 2x on that. It's all trapped in a potential sale or refi. But it took 6 months for us to get the NOI to jump, so there really wasn't much to distribute because those value add plays sometimes just take a while to happen. But once a quarter, I think is fine, for something like this.
So I'm just like, wanting to spell this out for people who are new. So like you said, most value add deals, there's not a lot of distributions in the beginning. maybe a year, maybe 2. But you're tracking that, saying, okay, this year they're going to get 9%. So even if I don't pay in the first 6 months, 9 months or whatever, whenever I sell this, they're owed that first year 9% plus the second year 9% plus the third. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if I don't pay them, right, because we're still in the ramp up phase, I still owe them that money. I owe them that 9%, so I'm not taking any profits from them, until that's all, paid back. And just to be clear, I don't take that split, that 70-25. I don't know if you guys do the same thing, but I don't take that split until after they get their 9% and all their initial investment back. I know sometimes the split happens if you meet the 9%, then it might kick in or something like that. I'm like, no, I'm going to give you all your money back plus your 9%. So that way you're completely out, risk free, and now you're just, everything else after that's gravy. So that's how I like to do it.
That's awesome. And so what's your plan with this current facility? You're planning on refining it or selling it?
We'll see. So rates have come down, right, since I bought it. The equity's definitely increased because we've increased the NOI. I think when we got it, NOI was like 90,000, something like that. And now we've got up to somewhere around like 130, something about like that. So we've done that. NOI is higher. I do want it to stabilize a little bit longer. Banks like to see, that consistent, like if it just shot up, they're gonna be like, well, let's make sure it's seasoned a little bit. So, but I'm already talking to some banks about a potential refi. And if I can get everyone's money out and then hold the property, I think that's one I'd like to own long term. If I can't get the refi I want, then I think like I might just do the sell it, and go buy a bigger one or two similar sized ones. That'd be my next plan.
Yeah,
That's sick.
I think we talked about this before one time, Tristen, about the power of refinance. You can pay off your investors, keep the property, and move their money somewhere else, buy another property, take the money out. But creating enough equity to where you can refinance is huge. It's something you can't really do in residential. It's a game changer, seriously. So that would be a great plan for you. How many units was that second one that you did? And then my second question on that is, how are you managing that now? You still managing it yourself? You have an on-site person?
What's up? It's Graham here. I want to tell you guys about somebody who absolutely proves that this stuff works. We've had him on our podcast before. You guys might remember him, Sean Katona. Picture this. Sean started out flipping houses and he was doing pretty good, but he felt like he was missing out on something bigger. Then he met J. Scott Shield and realized that commercial real estate is just like residential real estate, except for you add several more zeros and commas. Sean jumped into Scott's training, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work. Fast forward to today. Sean has built an impressive portfolio. He's spearheaded over 80 deals and he's living life on his terms. And now he's one of Commercial Academy's top coaches and hosts. Talk about a full circle moment. And here's the exciting part. Sean created his own custom masterclass to talk about how he went from flipping houses to a commercial real estate master. If you've ever thought, man, I just need somebody to show me how to do it, and someone who's actually done it before, Sean's your guy. Sean's journey proves it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. And now he's handing you his roadmap. Text Sean Masterclass to 888-653-1199. Again, that's 888-653-1199. It's not just training, it's learning from someone who transformed their entire investing career. Are you going to be next?
Yeah. So, amount of units, 142, I want to say. It's got 110 like storage units, and then there's 20 like RV or 22 RV parking spots. I probably did the math wrong. 120 units, 22 RV parking spots. And by the way, when we got it, it was at 68% occupancy, and now we've got it to 95%. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But in terms of management, I manage it myself. Storage is pretty easy. Like once you got it like going, like there's not too much to do. You just answer the calls. You have to have a local guy, at the property, in case you have to clean out a unit or cut off a lock or throw on a lock, something like that. But besides that, I answer the phones myself. I mean, 140 units is not a lot. I probably get 2 or 3 calls a week. Busier weeks, maybe it goes up to 6, 7, 8 calls. But I can just answer those myself. I mean, there's no reason to bring someone on to do something I can knock out with less than an hour a week of my time. So I just manage it myself. Yeah.
Do you have any online softwares or anything set up like that? Like, do you have like a smart facility, quote unquote, that everybody's going into? Or
Yeah. So I've got the website. I made sure that was clean, working properly. I use Easy Storage Solutions as my software. They will build you a website through their software that just integrates with their internal software. So it just is very seamless. And honestly, a lot of people just rent online. And if they call me, a lot of times I say, hey, just go to our website and rent one online, so I don't have to walk through the whole process with them. One time I was on the river in Austin, and I was like on a stand-up paddle board. And I was like, oh, the storage facility's calling me. Hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, I want to rent a unit. I'm like, oh God, I'm like in my swimming trunks. I'm on a paddle board. Why did I even take this call? I'm such an idiot. I was like, can you just rent it online? And they're like, yeah. And then like 5 minutes later, I got the notification that they rented a unit, signed their lease, and paid the first month's rent. I was like, oh man, this is awesome.
That's sick.
So
awesome. So you still got that one. And then you mentioned that you have a small bay flex deal. Definitely want to touch on that because we're big into small bay flex. And that's kind of like, obviously it's a popular asset class, but tell us about that one.
Yeah, so I find ways to challenge myself unintentionally, and I've already started to do that with this one. So after the storage deal, I was like, you know what? I love storage. I think it's great, but I want to get into more, larger stuff, a slightly bigger tenant mix instead of, 100, 200 square foot self-storage units that you rent out. I was like, let's do 1,500, 2,500 square foot, warehouse, flex, small bay, whatever you want to call it, spaces, and rent it out to businesses. So I started looking for that. So I started building a list. I was cold calling, going through LoopNet, going through Crexy, just trying to find deals, put in offers on a ton, was not able to get anywhere. I probably underwrote hundreds, put in offers on over 10 at least. And then finally I found one in North Houston that was about 13,000 square feet, and it was listed too high. I mean, they wanted like 1.2 million for it. And I was like, God, this is like, I think this is just going to be like not going to work. I'd shown some interest to the broker, and then a couple of weeks went by. He called me back. He's like, hey, I know we said we wouldn't do seller financing before, but the seller is interested in doing seller financing now. Would you be interested? And I was like, maybe. So we ended up doing a seller financing deal, and I can dive into the terms of that if y'all are interested.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Before you do that though, real quick, I want to make a note that I think is so important that I tell people, like whether they're a new broker, whether they're a new investor, whatever, and even my clients, I'll send them a deal, and a lot of times I'll be like, hey, this property is overpriced, because I want to make sure that's clear, because a lot of times you'll send somebody like, how's this a deal? It's like, I'll say, this property is overpriced. If you're interested in it and you think, it could fit your portfolio, let's make an offer on it where it makes sense for you. Or we'll do that, because guess what? When it doesn't sell 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, or a month later, or 2 months later, their broker is going to call you just like they did with you. And then you're going to be on the list of people he calls. Now, if you never make an offer on the property and you just sit back and think, oh, that's overpriced, but 2 other guys made an offer on the property at 60% of the value or 70% of the value, those other 2 guys are getting the call and they're going to get a deal. So moral of the story, if you see a property that's listed too high, or even if it's, right at market or whatever, you just never know what's going to happen.
True.
And shoot your shot. Like you said, you said seller financing. They said no. They called back, well, this property's not selling. Now we'll do seller financing. So anyways, that's just a little note. I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a very black and white person, meaning like, I see something's listed at this price and I'm like, well, that's not going to work. It's too high, right? But real estate and life in general is you never can take things at face value. There's always negotiation. You never really know what someone's willing to take, what they're willing to do. And, sometimes you can't really figure it out until you really crack into it. And that's why you have to call these brokers. You have to talk to them. You have to really dive into the deal, because you never know what they're going to say, or what the seller's willing to do, or, whatever it may be. So you just can't take things at face value. There's always way more layers underneath it if you're willing to dive in. And then sometimes just be patient, for the seller to come to realization that maybe, it is too high, and now they're willing to work with you at a lower price. So that's a good point.
For sure. Yeah. So tell us about the seller financing terms you got.
Okay, so I was like, well, let me get my pro forma, right? So I'm on my computer, going through my Excel. I'm like, what purchase price could I do this at? And they're like, well, and the broker told me, they're like, well, we're getting offers like kind of around the 1.1, 1.15 range, and I was like, okay, well, and I had already like missed out on the last 4 deals I put offers in on because someone else came and paid more, So I was like, okay, well, can I offer more than everyone else, if the seller financing terms are right? So I offered 1.2 million, but I said, look, I'm going to do 15% down. Okay. So that's about $185,000 in equity. And I'm going to do the 25 AM and a 7-year term. And then we're going to do 3.25% interest rate, which is ridiculous. But I was like, hey, if they're wanting to do seller financing, let's do seller financing.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other thing I did is I said, also, maybe I was being greedy. I don't know. I was like, also, this property needs some work and it's going to take some time to. I can get into the tenants and all that stuff in a second, but I was like, it's going to take some time to really get the cash flow coming in. I want 3 months of abated financing. I don't want the financing, mortgage payments, whatever, to kick in for 3 more months. So that's what I offered. And you know what? That's what they accepted. And I was like, oh,
That's
all right.
amazing. They didn't counter at all on the interest rate.
No, because I'd offered more money than everyone else had offered, but probably the most aggressive seller financing terms. I think the seller was like, hey, take whatever terms you want as long as I get my, 1.2 million. So it's one of those things. You see it a lot on like Twitter and X. They're like,
100%, yeah.
you either have to win
My
the
price,
price
your
or win the
terms.
terms. So in that one, I think I won the terms, and then she felt good about the price. So everyone feels good about it, right?
Yeah, that's sick. And I think that's too, people just get so caught in the weeds of like things have to be done this way, including myself. Sometimes I forget about it. Like we have our standard offers like 10% down, 5% interest, 25-year AM, 5-year balloon. That's kind of like what we go out at seller financing, because 5 is like, a good point or two below the current interest rate. But there's no reason why we couldn't ask for 3. And then also the other thing I think that's interesting that I've heard people talk about before is you just forget about all these little tidbits, but like asking for 3 months of rent, or not rent, but 3 months of delayed payments could be a game changer. If you're buying a property that's value add, you get a property lease in 3 months or something. Yeah, that's huge. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that payment is $5,000 a month, so delaying it 3 months is a $15,000 savings, right? And I could be cash flowing those 3 months, and actually increasing my reserves instead of draining them, while the property is going through renovations and lease up and all that stuff. So remember, you don't get what you don't ask for, so you got to ask for it.
100%. Another thing we throw in there is the right to market prior to closing, and we just kind of figure out the leasing stuff later. We just try to go ahead and make sure we have somebody in tow that is ready to go on the property as we're closing it. Kind of help speed up the lease up process.
Yeah. You said something earlier I forgot I want to ask you about. That was interesting. You were talking about, I think, your first storage facility. You said on the second one, the broker who listed your first one called you. And you mentioned that, you're a broker. So I'm curious, why did you have a broker list your first facility for you and sell it for you instead of just doing it yourself?
Oh yeah, this is a fun story. So I am a broker. I can sell properties. I've sold properties before, right? I was like, I'll just sell it myself. Seriously, I'll just sell it myself. I'll put it on Crexy. I'll put it on LoopNet. I can talk to any buyers. I can put a contract, whatever. Guys, it did not go well. It did not go well. You know what? I probably talked to 50 plus people because I had listed it myself. And I talked to 50 plus people. I was sending, bank statements, underwriting, tax stuff. And it was just tire kicker, waste of time. And I was like, oh my God, dude, I am just feeding like so much time into this, and I'm not getting anywhere close to where I want to sell it for at all. So the broker had cold called me actually, and I was like, yeah, man, let's just do a proposal, and he said, hey, look, I think it's worth this much. It was actually less than what I thought it was worth, but I'm not in the self-storage sales business, so how can I say exactly where the pulse of the sales market and what the cap rates would be, right? So one problem I was having is I think I was overpricing it originally. I think I wanted like $1 million for it. And he was saying like it's worth like 850. So first thing he says like, hey, it's worth this much, and 95% of our listings or whatever sell within 5% of what we think it's going to sell for, basically. And I was like, all right, look, if you can sell it for this, then I'm happy to work with you. And not even, I think 45 days later, maybe even a month later. It was pretty quick. He had a all cash 30-day close offer, at the 835, or maybe it was like 815. We landed on 835. And I was like, that's why you work with a broker that specializes in that, because they have the connection to the buyers that they've already vetted, they've already done deals with, or they're at least doing the vetting for you. And also they know how to price the asset correctly, so you're not turning off potential buyers. So yeah, I'm a broker. Doesn't mean I know how to sell self-storage, and that's why it works to work with a professional that works in that field and solves that problem.
For sure. Yeah, that's such a big point. This is not exactly the same, but when I moved over to City Plat for my old brokerage, I moved from like my first house I ever bought to an apartment, and I was going to keep the house and rent it, and I started to try to rent it myself, and my God, I probably got over 100 calls in a day, and I was like, nope. Not doing this. So I called my buddy who was a property manager and he helped me do it. But it's like there's so much value in having people do that kind of stuff because another thing too is like valuing your time. Your time's worth a lot. Like for example, we just moved we moved last week into a new house, and we've got all kinds of furniture I got to build. That's like nightstands and dressers and all kinds of stuff. I was talking to my wife today. She said, "Can you build this, this, and that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can for sure." And I'm like, I was updating my pipeline yesterday, and me and Jesse have like 9 deals we're closing, I think, by the end of the year. And so it's just been insane, just nonstop. My phone's ringing all the time, like just so much stuff we got to do. So I was like, why am I going to, spend a couple hours building all this stuff? Went on a website called TaskRabbit. This guy's going to come build all this stuff for me for like $25 an hour. I'm like, that is so worth every penny because I'm focusing on closing $1 million deals versus building some stuff. And I'm not above building stuff. I've built a bazillion different things, from my family as we've moved and all that stuff. But anyways, it's just realizing that your time's worth so much more. I think it's important to note.
And it's who, not how.
Mm-hmm.
Because guy that's running self-storage, that's doing this full time, knows the buyer is immediately going to call, and he's probably going to call them before you even technically get it live listed, and they're already going to be reviewing the property. It's just going to happen so much more speed. Same thing with an assistant, same thing with everything. And I think people are naturally built to specialize into one thing. I think guys a lot of time have one track minds anyways, but like we've talked about this with science of scaling, with all kinds of different things. But as we focused on what we're best at and we focus on that almost 100%, we're going to be much further ahead than if we're distracted with doing everything. Now in small markets, your small market broker or something like that, I can understand doing a lot more generalized stuff, but when you're focused, it makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. I know you said you have a stop around an hour, so I want to ask you one last question that I'm kind of just curious about. So, and Jesse probably knows this, and people on X and stuff probably know this, but so are you a broker now, or are you do investing full time?
I'm still a broker. I work here in Austin. I'm at a firm called Foresight Commercial Real Estate. We've got a lot of retail, landlord listings, and then we do tenant rep as well. So working that here in my market, Austin, Texas. Completely different than my investing, right? I'd love to own retail properties, but that is a whole different ball game, and I should know better than anyone that it's just a lot more difficult, a lot more capital intensive, a lot more time intensive. So for right now, I'm sticking to my metal boxes as more of a side hustle. Simple cash flowing metal boxes, low maintenance, low headaches.
My favorite.
And I'd prefer to just keep doing that. And maybe one day I'll go full time investing, but I mean, really, I just try to buy that one deal, put the work in to stabilize it. And then once it's stabilized, you just kind of let it ride and I can keep focusing on my brokerage, and just building that up. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool.
You said it perfect, and we've talked about it a bunch, that retail is like, you have to do TI, you have to build somebody a counter, you have to put in new floors, you have to put in new lights, you have to paint, you have to do new bathrooms every time somebody leaves, for the most part. So it's like a lot of money. And even a 1,000-foot space, you could get, $10 in TI, and that's $100,000. And so industrial, you're dealing with, like you said, metal boxes. And that's why we love it. That's why we started in it, because we don't have tons of capital in the beginning, and we just want to easy cash flow and things. So I think that's great. Well, this has been awesome. If people want to find out, more about what you're doing, or if they want to reach out to you, what's the best place to do it?
yeah, follow me on X at Tristen, Tristen, Palori, Palori. That's me. You can see everything I'm working on, and I post about everything I'm working on, both in brokerage and real estate investing on there. So I'd say, just follow me on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening to this one. I think it's been very valuable, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, Tristen.
Thanks, guys.